joining either live or to our recording to our fireside chat from TrustMe.ai with Matt Gehrisch from Focivity. He's a principal consultant and vCISO there. And we also are joined by TrustMe.ai's Chief Technology Officer, Mir Islam, as well as myself, Ayesha Sheikh, who is the Director of Growth at TrustMe.ai. So we're really happy to have everyone here to be hosting this webinar, this fireside chat this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. We are really excited to have this dialogue with Matt, talking about the role of a CISO or a vCISO and what that means in the current landscape, getting his feedback, his insight, and also hearing Mir's thoughts and feedbacks and the like. And so I did brief introductions with Matt and Mir. If you guys want to introduce yourself in more detail, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sounds good. Matt, would you like to do the honor and go first?
Yeah, sure. My name is Matt Gehrisch. I'm the principal consultant and vCISO here at Focivity. I do vCISO consulting for small businesses, specifically helping my clients create and implement their information security programs. I've spent a long time in the IT and tech and cyberspace. So this is sort of the culmination of, 20 some years of career that has been a wild ride, but kind of also brought me to where I am with a special set of experience that helps me be very good at what I do to tie business and technology and security together for my clients.
Perfect. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah.
So as for myself, my name is Mir Islam. I am the current CTO at TrustMe.ai. We are tackling some real big problem that the industry is currently facing in the security, productivity, and the people space. And what we are doing is we are providing a platform for the small and mid-sized businesses to have the peace of mind in terms of the tracking their productivity, tracking the security-related issues, and have a like an overall understanding of where the company stands in terms of risks and security. So that's what we do at TrustMe. Before that, I've been involved in various different companies, Citrix, Pulse Secure, and at LinkedIn, holding various different roles. But today's focus on this, will be on how we can leverage the knowledge that we have at the security space, and especially we would like to hear from Matt, who has been my colleague in the past at Pulse Secure. So welcome back, Matt, and we'll learn something that that he has seen in the real life scenarios while he has been consulting with the small and mid-sized businesses. What are their problems are, what are their daily things that the CEOs kind of like stay up. So Matt, let's go ahead. Ayesha, do you have some specific things that you want to ask?
Yeah, no, thank you both for giving your background and introductions. I'm really happy to be able to have this conversation together. And Matt, we're really honored to have you as our first guest for our fireside chat kickoff here. So thank you for making the time. Mir, you touched a little bit on how you and Matt know each other in your past background at Pulse. So I'll just kind of get right to it. In terms of both of your background and experience in the security space, what are the challenges that you've seen in the past, but also currently here in the present? And what do you foresee or what are you seeing trending for the future in this space? I'll let either of you guys start off. Maybe Matt, if you want to start.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of the challenges have been consistent over time. Some of the context around them with business and technology as technology changes is making things different. But a lot of the challenges with security still come down to similar things of discipline, just general like behavioral hygiene in organizations and what people do, and making sure that processes are designed to allow the business to operate safely, and that people are doing the things that they need to do and aware of what it is that they need to do. Because a lot of people don't think about what can go wrong. And, most people generally focus on what's expected to happen and what's going to go right and what they're doing, and not looking at every potential angle for what bad could happen. And nor really should they. I think, people need to be focused on the future and not, paranoid about everything bad that can happen. And management needs to define a program and systems and processes to let people operate safely with those safeguards. So we're still having the same problems in the industry of, you know, we're people, we're human, and that piece is never really going to change. And we just have to continue to, work to teach people, train people, make them aware, and also figure out, from a psychology standpoint, how do we drive things to improve, and what technologies can we adopt to help us and accelerate the process along the way.
Yeah, I would echo that part with Matt, that about the people aspect. In the past, we have seen that, the most of the issues that I faced were due to human errors and people either not following process or lack of process altogether. And both can be troublesome. So having a solidified approach in handling day-to-day businesses, and as Matt mentioned, the overall security hygiene is kind of like imperative to have a company which is not prone to have either data breach or some other issues. So for example, having a proper phishing education or training in place is really, really important, because as we know that 70 to 80% of the data breaches happen due to the phishing. So the users need to understand that what the phishing looks like, what should they be doing, how should they contact their IT team or security team, and kind of like get the help that they need, when it's needed. So, and that is just very basic, fundamental, right? This is something that everybody can do it. And doing those basic things, can often reduce the attack vectors, by a huge margin.
No, makes sense. And I think both of you touched on this on some of the roles and responsibilities. I would imagine some of these things would fall under a CISO's primary responsibilities or their team under them. So question to you, Matt, as sort of piggybacking on this, what are the primary responsibilities of a CISO or a vCISO? And then as follow-up to that, what doesn't a CISO or a vCISO do?
Yeah, I see a lot of folks that aspire to the CISO role in the information security professional community. And one of the questions when I talk to them as well is that really the direction you want to go? Because the CISO role is a business role. A technical background helps a lot, but ultimately it's a business role. Like, you're helping the business develop and define strategy, manage risk, cyber risk. It could be operational risk, business risks, what have you. You're getting buy-in from other leaders and other departments that you need to have do things to make sure that the organization is operating securely. You're solving problems in the organization. You're solving business problems, though, in the organization. This is about business enablement, not saying no. There's a lot of kind of a bad rap that security folks a lot of times can get in organizations, because we're always saying no to things. And I think it's really more about, well, let's do it this way. Make it more collaborative. That security doesn't own the areas that we need to influence. IT owns IT, HR owns HR, sales owns sales, but we need to influence how they operate, and we need to make sure they have the right tools. So the CISO in there is accountable for designing and implementing the security program it's a governance and assurance sort of role here, but they're not going to own all of those controls, all of those safeguards, all the way down through how processes specifically are designed and exactly what tools are used and how those tools are used. And that's sort of an anti-pattern that gets to what doesn't the CISO do is like they can't own all of those things. And there's often a misunderstanding that, well, the CISO is going to own security across the entire organization. And that's just something that's not sustainable and not realistic. The folks in HR and IT, like they've got to own the design and execution of their particular pieces of processes and how their tools are developed. And the CISO then is there to help and to guide, to be that trusted advisor as we're defining all of this and making sure that there's adequate governance to make sure that it's operating properly.
Got you. And given that you're saying these are what you're defining as the role of the CISO, do you think when a company is looking at okay, we need to bring somebody on in that type of capacity, and what their primary business drivers are for why they feel like they need to bring in a role like that on, do you think that conflicts with what the role actually is or is supposed to be as you described, or do you think that there's alignment there?
When you think about it from a business enablement standpoint, every company has a security program. I should probably start there, whether they know it or not. Processes don't have to be undocumented. An undocumented process, as Mir just mentioned, it's still a process. Things are getting done. If it's undocumented, they're reinventing the process potentially every time they do it, but there's still some sort of a process there. And some risks are being addressed in those processes inherently because the folks that are doing them are going to see some risks and know, somewhat what to do for some things. But ultimately, from a business driver standpoint, what I generally see business drivers roll up into 4 general areas. You've got regulatory or legal requirements. It could be HIPAA, it could be PCI, could be privacy legislation that's starting to come out, in different states right now, which makes that difficult because you've got this tapestry of privacy laws with different requirements depending on where you operate. Customer demand is another area, so sales pressure, customers saying, I'm not going to buy from you if you don't have a SOC 2 report, or if you have to fill out this questionnaire, and if we don't like your answers on this questionnaire, either we're going to try and make you change things and prove that you've changed things, or we're just not going to buy from you. Like there can be pressure there. Cyber insurance has been getting more expensive, and the insurance companies they're starting to scrutinize businesses more when you do your policy renewals. So I think a lot of business leaders are seeing the insurance questionnaires now when they go to do their renewals, all of a sudden being a little more difficult to answer, and maybe realizing, gosh, we don't have great answers for some of these things, and our policy premiums are going up, or we're maybe not able to get enough coverage, or we're having to combine coverage from multiple providers because of this. And obviously, the one that everybody always kind of assumes, but it's worth mentioning, is prior security incident. It's another driver is something happens and they realize, oh, yeah, this can happen to us. Because a lot of small orgs especially think we're too small to be a target.
Yeah.
And that may be true, but a lot of what's going on out there from a cyber risk standpoint ends up being opportunistic. And maybe they're not targeted attacks at that specific small business, but you leave the door unlocked and somebody notices, you still lock the door of your shop when you leave at night. It's the same kind of thing to keep the opportunistic folks. They may not be targeting your shop, but it can still happen. So those, I think, are the main drivers that I see consistently. And, business context may change a little bit, but everything kind of seems to roll up under those things.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that's, as we worked with customers in our business, we've kind of seen similar, I don't want to say pain points, but kind of driving factors, right? For why there is that need for the security role or the CISO role. Mir, I don't know if you have any comments that you want to add to that.
Yeah, No, I think I just want to add to Matt's point that there are now additional requirements and regulations which are being pushed from the government, various different agencies, state and federal level. And this thing kind of like um, puts the onus on the company owner that, hey, you are required to follow these rules and you are required to safeguard your employee information. You are required to safeguard your customer data, right? And I believe the threshold is that if you have more than 50 employees, which most of the middle-sized businesses do, you kind of like follow into those categories. And that's where the problem is. And Matt kind of like alluded to it that, the CISO role as an administrative, oversight cannot do everything that's possible. He cannot go to the HR people and look over their shoulder on a daily basis and see that what they're doing. He cannot go to R&D and make sure that every code that is being written by the developer is secured. He needs help. And that's where the security teams comes in, and that's where I believe also Matt utilizes a lot of different tools to help him in shaping that picture, that what is it is going to look like at the end of the day when the CISO, vCISO gives the report that, oh, yeah, you are good. Yeah, you have all the processes in place. Yes, people are following the processes. Yes, the trainings are being done. So all of those things kind of like need to kind of like work hand in hand with the CISO role or vCISO role and make sure that the company is run, properly.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. I think you're touching on what my next question actually, or it leads into my next question. Some of the things you're saying, some of the challenges in what a CISO is able to do, and what all of the information that's being asked, or the information that needs to be taken a look at. Sort of, what are some of the hindrances in addition to that of the CISO role, and also having a security team under them? In terms of, some of those challenges, but also even in terms of cost. Like, if you were to have a team and the capability to have people assigned to do all of these different tasks and roles, what would that look like from a medium-sized business standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, there's a little bit of an underlying assumption when we look at what are the hindrances here. And I alluded to it a little bit, being security with that reputation for being the Department of No. One of my favorite sort of meme things is, security, we put the no in innovation. I love that line. It's hilarious, but it also highlights a lot of the problem that we have. Like I mentioned, it's more about saying, like, we can do it this way, and looking at what's the business trying to achieve, and how are we going to enable that safely. And what's really cool is, like, if you do this well, you can enable the business, help the organization compete, and it doesn't have to be a hindrance. Security can be a byproduct of good governance. If you have accessible policies that can be used by folks in every layer of the organization to make decisions, make good decisions. Security can be a byproduct of good process design and good tool implementation. Security can be a product of documentation and training. It can be a product of consistent execution, because people know what to do and what to expect of each other, because it's documented, because it's trained, because things have been implemented well. At the end of the day, security is a byproduct of operational excellence, process capability, process quality, management's commitment to process improvement. So if you think, like, if you tie all that back and kind of look at the common theme there, all of these things can drive efficiency within the business. And so, an example of this is if you've got a technical team that is, doing product development for a SaaS startup, and you've got good policies in place that are written in plain English and accessible to the organization, that technology team at a much lower level in the organization can evaluate what tool or what technologies they need to be able to achieve some new feature they're doing, and evaluate options based on those policies that tell them what they need to be thinking about. And they're able to use that, and they can help make a choice and justify that choice, make a recommendation to leadership. Here's what we've found. This is the best tool because of X, Y, and Z technical reasons, but also it supports our policies and is aligned here. And leadership can then be much more comfortable greenlighting that instead of having to run everything all the way up the chain for every decision. All of these things create inefficiency when the team's uncertain of what the requirements are, what they need to do, whose decision it is. All of that stuff slows you down. Where if you do a good job building your security program to support these folks, it actually lets you move much, much faster and doesn't have to be a hindrance at all. So this is, government governance in action. Like you've decided how you're going to decide, and you don't have to have this decision by committee. You don't have to be making everything an exercise in judgment every time, and you can be much more consistent that way. So, like an accountant or a lawyer, I would say, a CISO, if it's being done right, and the security team should be able to help you save money, especially if they're helping you win sales at the same time. So the underlying assumption that, building a security team is going to be a hindrance to the business, I think is coming from a place where maybe there's some invalid assumptions there based on, older ways of thinking or older patterns.
Yeah, I think you're right. The security is, I mean, and I like the quote that you mentioned that it's the no in the innovation, right? So the thing is that, and that's what people think, that, security team is there to tell them no. But actually, that is not the case, right? The case is that, how you can do things safely. Because obviously, if everything is no, then the business will not run. And the purpose of business is not to not run, but to run as efficiently as possible, as securely as possible, while taking care of the data of the customer, the employee, and whatnot, right? So the critical part is that, I think you kind of like touched on it, is that fostering a culture of security in the company, and not that, hey, these are the sets of rules you go and follow. But no, rather, these are the
Yeah.
things that we want to do, and this is the environment that we want to create. This is the culture of the awareness, culture of cognizance that we want to promote. And once you have that in place, security is a byproduct then. That everything will be pretty much.
Absolutely.
If people know how to detect the phishing, they will not click on that button. You don't have to go and tell them on a daily basis, hey, don't click on that email link, right? So I think that's a very valuable point, that creating and fostering that culture is super important. One thing that I want to mention is that, and Aisha kind of like asked that, how do you even create a security team, and what does it even cost, right? If you have some insight on that, please share also.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of strategic outsourcing, especially in smaller orgs. Um, and outsourcing 101 teaches you do the things that are your core competency, and
Mhm.
you're going to outsource things that somebody else can do more efficiently, more effectively than you. And in the small organizations that I work with, um, outsourcing to IT managed service providers or managed security service providers, so MSPs or MSSPs, is huge because they can come in and drop in a lot of the tools and things, just airlift it and just drop it in because they've already put together these systems. They know what tools work together, and it can be this turnkey system potentially. Uh, they can help you create bespoke, systems as well. But if they've already taken the time to build this, an IT MSP can be a huge advocate for this because they really can accelerate getting the technical side of your security program uh, in place there. And an outsourced uh, security operations center to actually do the monitoring. You see in the movies of people in the darkened room, and there's TV screens all over, and they're watching all the monitors. the security operations center is sort of like that. It's like the security guard watching DVR and all the cameras, except these are the digital cameras on your network and in your systems. And a lot of that can be also handled with automation and tooling, but it takes special skills and knowledge to know and be able to determine if something's real or not, you know, and that sort of thing. And it's expensive to bring people with that knowledge in, and it's expensive to build a team for 24/7 coverage. Anybody that's built a 24/7 ops team for anything, regardless if it's security or something else, by the time you cover PTO and sick time and other types of job duties and that kind of stuff, you've got to overbuild that team to be able to cover enough shifts to do 24/7, 365, 365 days a year. It's very, very expensive. And if you outsource carefully, uh, you can do that in, I've seen folks be able to outsource MSPs with full security stacks for, you know, $250 to maybe $350 per head in the organization. Per month. But when you extrapolate that out, it's a relatively small investment to what it would actually cost to bring in a security team that's anywhere near that deep, or all the tooling, because that a lot of times will include licenses and stuff at that price too. It's really hard to compete with that. So until an organization really starts getting into the larger end of the SMB space, or starting to get into mid-market, outsourcing can really make it very accessible to build a really, really great security program uh, without spending a huge amount, especially if you're also on the smaller end of that spectrum, bringing in somebody like it's a vCISO, because they can come in and help accelerate. Like they're experienced using these frameworks, NIST CSF or the SIS-18 or SOC 2 or high trust, whichever framework it is that is appropriate for you, or combining those frameworks. Their experience in using them, implementing them best, kind of best ways. I don't want to say best practices necessarily, but best ways given the context of the business to do this. Maybe they would do it one way in one org and they'll do it a different way in yours because of the rest of that context. And they can really accelerate things there too, because they're pulling from that background experience. They're not reinventing the wheel every time. To get ready for a SOC 2 assessment for a lot of orgs, unless they're ready on day one, which very few are, that's a 12 to 18 month process, usually from the time you decide we need to get SOC 2 to the time you've got the report in hand at the end of the audit. And if you don't have somebody who's ever been through it before and you're trying to fumble your way through it, that you quickly can turn into an 18 to 24 month or longer process. And a lot of times you'll end up with exceptions at the end of it in the report that then your customers will see as well. So, from a business enablement standpoint, what was that time worth? What you're going to pay that person to come in with that experience is far less than the opportunity cost of what else your team could have been focusing on through the process of building that, and mistakes you may make along the way that are difficult to undo.
I mean, absolutely, that makes sense. And I think that's why, you mentioned the tool, the tools like TrustMe and there's several other platforms which are out there can potentially, help to kind of like accelerate the process. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know to touch on that, Mir, Matt, I know we've been talking with you as a team about the TrustMe solution and talking to potential customers in the market. And so what about our solution, just the TrustMe solution, stood out to you, given your role and your experiences and some of the things that you've been talking about, challenges that you've seen?
The biggest thing for me is that it's easy. My clients want the easy button. I want the easy button for my clients. And implementing technical tools and processes and stuff into any organization can be difficult. And especially when you have multiple tools to implement and you're changing multiple projects. Now you're changing people's behavior and their day-to-day and the tools, and they're having to train up on all these different tools. So with something like this, what stood out to me is Mir and the team were demoing all of this and going over, what the product does. I was thinking through like this, it covers multiple pieces of vulnerability management, for instance, which is something that's foundational. It's in every assessment that I do, regardless of what framework, regardless of what business. Every business needs to do vulnerability management. And, especially today with serverless technologies where you don't even have a server to put a traditional agent on, doing static application security testing and doing dynamic application security testing to look at the source code and look at the actual running application instead of the server itself, which doesn't exist, and being able to incorporate those in with the traditional vulnerability management for other endpoints and other servers is really important, because you don't end up with this tool sprawl that's really easy to get. And I also like the dashboard capabilities that you can pull data from these different data sources, your own scanners as well as other tools, and build customized dashboards that are specific to each stakeholder in the org, so you can present them with the right information so that it's presented in a way that's usable to that person. So like a systems administrator, a security engineer, they're going to be in the weeds. They're going to be looking at technical details, numbers, specific vulnerabilities, that sort of thing. The IT director, or maybe a senior manager or an IT manager or somebody, they're going to want to look at implementation details. They're going to want to look at project progress and status of patching, and maybe ratios of severities. But they're not going to necessarily want to get into the details of the specific vulnerabilities. And then you get to executives, they're going to be more interested in like SLAs of, are we getting these patches rolled out on time? They don't care about the individual patches. They don't really care about the individual severities and that. They just care about like, are we doing what we said we would do within the time that we agreed as an organization was appropriate for us? So being able to build dashboards that get the right information to the right person in the org it is really, really, really important. And you can do that here. And to bring those multiple sources together, if you're doing SOC 2 or something like that, it's also easier to pull evidence together for those audits. So it's going to speed up the audit too, because you don't have to go to a bunch of disparate tools to collect the information the auditor wants to see. You can show it there, but one of the biggest things the auditors are looking for is not just, are you doing vulnerability scanning? It's, what are you doing with the data that comes out of it? Like, are you actually following your process? Are you actually patching? Are you actually making decisions about those vulnerabilities and prioritizing them and doing something about it? And that's where, this tool can really help. And I like that you've incorporated the capabilities around developer productivity, because that ties into what we were talking about, efficiency and being a positive, creating a positive business value for the security program. So the value of your security program isn't, well, nothing happened, I guess we did a good job. You want to show them with the tools you implement and the investment that they made, that there has been some other positive value there as well. And security becomes more of a byproduct of all of that business enablement. And that piece of it, it kind of excited me as an operations nerd for process quality and developer productivity, and how the team is working and how that ties into the vulnerability management. And so you can track and actually see the work that's being done to address those things. And the auditors are going to love that too, if you're doing SOC 2.
Yeah, I love the way that you just phrased that last part, especially given for us too, when we're looking at the governance aspect, we're looking at it from a business context standpoint, right? So I love how you're speaking about security sort of becoming that byproduct, or just always there in the background versus the focal point. Mir, if you want to add anything to what Matt talked about from our team from a TrustMe standpoint.
Right. I mean, I think Matt covered it really, really well.
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Matt. One thing that you mentioned is the aggregation of the information and putting it into a single place. I think that becomes a key aspect of any kind of audit or evaluation that the CISO role may want to do, because they may need to bring in several different pieces of tools, run several different reports, and maybe, one person, two persons need to sit down, read all those reports, and figure out, what exactly does it all mean and what connects to what, right? You may recall, Matt, I don't, at Focivity, from when we were doing the GDPR, it was like super manual. We had to like collect all the data from here, from there, and then figure out, okay, how do we actually be in compliant on the GDPR, right? I think the aspect that you touched on, the TrustMe platform brings all of these disparate data in one place. So one single person can take a look at that. Oh, okay, it makes sense. There are context, with the security, with the productivity, with the vulnerability patch management, are those things being done? And this is doing in a continuous basis, round the clock. So it's not like one time you do it, done, and move on, right? No, it's a continuous process. And as with the SOC 2 and all the other compliances, getting that over the hump and getting the first certification is critical. But people actually fall off from that because they say, oh, okay, we got it, right? But the thing is that, unless you have a continuous monitoring and continuous remediation process in place, you are not going to be compliant in one year down the road or 2 years down the road when somebody may ask you, right? So that's kind of like critical aspect, and that's what TrustMe kind of like steps in and gives a lending hand to vCISOs like you and the others who may be driving their businesses for the small and mid-sized entities, that so that they can have all of these things in one place and they can see that what's happening, and they can then take a decision how to approach. Yep.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, in terms of just the market in general, we've talked about some of the things from business driving standpoints and some of the challenges in that space that CISOs are seeing. Are there any other trends that you're seeing in the market recently that you think are areas that will become more of a focus or that will become more fall under the category or role responsibility for a CISO or their team?
Privacy right now is something that's really coming to the forefront. And privacy gets misunderstood a lot. And a lot of times, because it overlaps with security in many ways, the security officer ends up also sort of owning privacy in an organization. But privacy also overlaps a lot with legal. And so the security officer may not necessarily always be the appropriate person in an organization. And to combine those two into the same person, it can potentially, create some problems because of the overall scope of both roles at that point. But a lot of, and the reason I mention, privacy gets misunderstood a lot is because in common, the way we normally in the English language use privacy, it's more like confidentiality. It's, keeping secrets secret. But when we talk about privacy in the terms of like privacy legislation, GDPR, whatever the privacy, I always get that one messed up because I don't live in Europe, or California's law or New York or whatever. It's more around who owns the data, and that data about an individual actually belongs to that individual. It doesn't belong to the organization, and the organization is steward of that information, and that the individual has rights of how that information is to be used. And you have to have processes in place to allow that individual to request how my data is going to be used and give consent to it being used that way. And if we're going to change the way you're going to use it, they have to reconsent to those new things. There's a lot of things around privacy that have nothing to do with keeping secret secret and are more around the consent and the fact that the company doesn't actually own that data. They're stewards of that data. And again, it overlaps with security, but it also overlaps with legal and operations. So that's a big one that's coming up that a lot of organizations are going to have to wrestle with. AI is another one that's presenting some interesting challenges because it's also developing really, really fast. I mean, as technologies come out, everything always moves fast in tech, but like AI is moving alarmingly fast compared to, tech that we thought moved fast in the past. So I think that's another area as well that I'm seeing themes that businesses are starting to wrestle with the security and privacy concerns around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think there's two things that I wanted to touch on that. And one, I just appreciate you giving that example of privacy versus security, right? And sort of the overlaps there that are occurring now, or how to take a look at those when there's different people involved, decision makers involved. And it's interesting because we had a conversation just yesterday with some customers that we were meeting with that brought this up. Within an organization, there's different, it's almost siloed how they operate when it comes to some of these priorities that are overlapping priorities, but there's no necessarily communication or good communication, rather, so to speak. So seeing it in just this example that you're giving, what are you seeing sort of remedies or things that companies are trying to do to mitigate that, or as they're seeing that, to address it?
From the private or from the AI perspective, is that where you're
From
referring there? Or
just in general, if you're looking at privacy versus security, or AI, all of
yeah.
these different areas that companies are concerned about, but maybe concerned about them in separate operating silos.
I am. I'm starting to see organizations looking specifically for privacy assessments now, whereas prior it was security assessments. So like a NIST cybersecurity framework assessment, or just SOC 2 readiness, or something like that. And I've had two orgs just in the last few months that are looking for privacy assessments now, because they want to make sure they're doing the right things. And kudos to these orgs. They're coming for this assessment before they're going and doing these things. Like, this is proactive on their part. They're not coming in after the fact. We went into some new product or market or vertical, or we're doing this new marketing thing, and after the fact, we need to do a privacy assessment to make sure it was okay. They're going through and saying, what do we need to do to make sure we do this right from the get-go? So I applaud those folks for that. But this year is the first time I've had folks ask for privacy assessments, and that's a big change. Nobody's looking for like AI assessments or anything there. I think so many companies, it's like it is still so nascent right now that folks are just trying to figure out, what can it do? What can it do? How much of this is just marketing? What's it really useful for? And that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of experimentation with it. Whereas with privacy, we know there's a lot of value in the data that we already have. And so it makes a lot of sense for somebody, a business or marketing or sales leader, to say, hey, we all have this data. Let's go do this analysis with it and do this other thing, or share it with this third party to allow us to get more value out of it. And, that's when all of a sudden you can get, afoul of privacy laws, because you haven't gotten consent to share that with somebody new. You haven't gotten consent to do something new with that data. And that can burn you with AI too.
Yeah.
Because if you're experimenting with AI with that private data, and that wasn't something that was part of your privacy policy and the consent that was already given, even if you're not doing something in production, you still got to go out and, get that consent again to do those new things. And it can be a pain in the butt and slow you down some, but it can also keep you from getting in really hot water.
Yeah, I think on the AI aspect, it is coming up very, very fast and furious, obviously. And EU has just published a draft proposal on the AI usage, and how the data shall be used, and all of those things, kind of like the GDPR that they did a few years back. And the core of the thing is that just like you mentioned, Matt, the contents belong to the user, whoever has created it. Now the problem with the AI is that it needs a lots and lots of data to train it and to make it useful. And sometimes the AI providers have to be cognizant of that fact that the data, that how they're using it, is the data sanitized, is the Did somebody poison the data, and all of those things, right? And that becomes critical. For the small and mid-sized businesses, obviously they may not jump into it immediately, but they have some use cases where they must take into account on how they're using AI. For example, that ChatGPT is the most common, right? Everybody uses ChatGPT or trying to use ChatGPT, and you and I, we are trying to increase our productivity by using the ChatGPT, and that is true for the mid-sized and small businesses as well. But the problem is that if they do it in an unsafe manner, they can leak the data. They can put some
Yes.
company confidential information in ChatGPT. ChatGPT will happily take it and it will retain it, and then it probably will train itself with the same data, and come tomorrow, somebody else asks some questions and they may use your data to provide the answer. That's a very big problem, right? And that's something actually TrustMe is also looking into it, like how we can provide a secure way to provide this facility to our users so that they don't leak their data, right? Like by a secure proxy of the chat or secure chat itself that is only localized, and data is used only in the local context and not going outside to the cloud, not going outside to the chat GPT, Claude, or Gemini, right? So that is something kind of like coming up, and it is going to become more and more important for the obviously you will face it as well for the vCISO role and the companies in general, that how they want to handle it, because they don't want to stop everything, like we talked about the no, right? We don't want to
Yeah.
stop using the users to stop using chat GPT, but we want to provide a safe way and mechanism for them to use it without compromising the security of the company.
Yep. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, uh, the employees in these organizations, they just want to do a good job. They want to get their
Exactly.
work done. They think they're being helpful by being efficient. And, when you put that internal data that potentially is classified as sensitive and internal only and that sort of thing into one of these tools, yeah, they've just leaked data uh, to a system that you don't control,
Right.
and you don't necessarily know how that data is going to be used for training and other things. And I feel like there's also some intellectual property risks here
Mhm.
with business as well. That when these things create something with generative AI, if it's creating something out of thin air, who really owns that intellectual property, especially if that training data aligns very closely with the produced data ends up aligning very closely with training data that was pulled from the public internet that somebody else uh, had created, or the accuracy of the information. The stories about the lawyers that got caught using Chat GPT to help them write briefs, and the judge realized like the cases it was citing never existed. Can you,
That's right.
you got
I
to
am.
fact check some of this stuff
Yeah.
as well, and that sort of thing. Prompt engineering is another really interesting thing. Just last week, folks noticed that Amazon had rolled out a new feature where you could search comments from reviews.
Mhm.
And folks realized, wait, we can ask it to do other things. So like people were like, hey, write me a limerick about this product. And it would use the information in the comments and the product to write a limerick about the product. So the scope of what the AI was supposed to be able to do versus what it actually could do hadn't been limited enough, which then makes you think like, well, what else could somebody use this for by feeding this, feeding prompts in to try to get around some of the safeguards that might be put into the system to keep it contained. Uh, but when small businesses put these in, they have to, especially with chatbots and stuff, you connect it up to your data sources. But if that data source is an internal database that
Mhm.
has data that is not necessarily needed for the chatbot, but maybe it's other business data, is that chatbot with the right prompts going to be able to access other data in that system? Um, that the way that it's scoped, the way that it's implemented, uh, could be uh, a real
Interesting.
risk.
Yeah.
If somebody decides they want to try stuff, and it's difficult to monitor that. Like we've got tools to monitor activity on networks and
Mhm.
servers and laptops and those types of things. The tools and stuff to monitor what people are doing in a generative AI system and stuff, like this is all still kind of developing. So to be able to identify when somebody's doing these things and trying to game the system, it may be really difficult to number one, detect it, and number two, figure out what actually may have been leaked in the process as well. So yeah, there's a whole lot that folks are still trying to wrap their heads around. But at the same time, I think organizations, business leaders need to understand, like, this is huge. This is going to change the world. Those who get behind are going to be playing catch up for a long time. So it definitely is worth investigating, learning, and experimenting with. You just got to know that it's not all, sunshine and rainbows and happy path. Only what I think is going to happen. It's, there's potential bad stuff and potential for misuse. They just need to be aware of and ask their vendors as they're implementing what should we be aware of? What should we be thinking about? What mistakes might we make as we're implementing this, and make sure their vendors can talk to them about that and help them through that process.
Yeah, I think you said it really, really well. And I just want to have like a shameless plug in there about the Trust Me platform, is that we are going to provide that a secure chat proxy and the local large language models which are going to actually kind of like solve some of this problem, because then you are going to encompass the data, keep it within your network and not let it go outside. So even if somebody tries to make it misbehave, okay, you are misbehaving locally. You are not really doing something. But we also have that. You mentioned the prompt engineering. We have the capability to detect prompt injection and see that how prompts may be used as a kind of like a way to bypass some of the safeguards that is being put in place. So I just wanted to quickly touch base on that, because as you are facing your customers, these things will come up. And you know that your partner already has some solutions which can help you to move forward.
And that's great. You guys are ahead of the game on that stuff.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, I second that shameless plug as we're approaching the top of the hour. I think so much valuable insight from you, Matt, and also from you, Mir. So thank you both for the knowledge share and the conversation. I think last takeaway I'd like to get from both of you, if you were to give just a couple of high level from what we just discussed over the last hour, key takeaways to those listening, be it current CISO, someone who's looking for a CISO-like solution, someone who is just learning about what a CISO does, and some of the solutions like TrustMe that can help in that space. What are some of the key takeaways that you would give to the audience in terms of the roles and responsibilities within that space, but also what TrustMe can do to help augment or support, or even just provide a standalone solution?
Yeah. I guess, my takeaway is that having somebody that can combine the, sort of strategy, governance, people, process, technology, and security all with business to help you come up with the right strategy so that your security program is truly aligned with your business is really, really important. Even in very small orgs, because I said, every organization has a security program, even self-employed folks, one-person shops. You have a security program, whether it's written down or not, and it's worth thinking about. Am I doing the right things? And so having a vCISO, or having a CISO or a fractional CISO in your organization, or even if it's your CTO or CIO, and having them have that additional responsibility formally put there. If you don't know who owns it, then nobody owns it. That really is kind of what it comes down to, and nothing happens. If nobody is accountable for something, it's not going to happen. Or if you got too many people accountable for it, again, nothing's going to happen because you have confusion. So you've got to identify who's responsible, what do we need to do, how are we going to align that to the business, and that really is where the CISO role fits in ultimately. And I think every organization should at least consider it, even if it's just a little bit of consulting here and there to ask questions, an hour or two a month versus somebody full time. but it can still be immensely helpful in making sure that your business operates safely and efficiently.
Thank you. Mir, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so I think the security landscape is changing very, very rapidly, right? And having folks like Matt kind of like helping the companies shepherding their resources in a directed fashion where they can, fix the most common problems and fix the issue that the users may face is very, very critical, very, very important. So thank you, Matt, for doing that. And it's actually great to have you on the show to kind of like help us to also navigate, some of these issues that you are facing on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. I know you have your podcast that you host. Correct me if I'm wrong, the Mindful Business Security Show.
Yes.
So is that a weekly, bi-weekly? I'll let you give a little plug for your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. The Mindful Business Security Show is monthly and as a call-in radio show style. Up until this point, the callers have been small business owners, small business leaders asking questions and basically, getting 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A time on the show from a guest host that's an expert in that particular topic area for the show and myself. And it's been great because folks are able to get actionable feedback, but the questions are coming from folks in small businesses that are wrestling with the same problems that other small businesses are. We are changing up a little bit going forward, though. About to release a security awareness training episode here in about a month or so. That will be for small businesses, and it should fulfill the need for security awareness training for very small orgs, self-employed folks as well, to make sure that it covers a well-rounded awareness training program. And the callers going forward are going to be security pros who are calling in to answer questions or give their tips. So I'm changing up the format just a little bit, but it's still going to be targeted at small business owners, small business leaders, to help them learn about cybersecurity, how to protect their business, and how to operate safely. And it's, we try to keep it non-technical and we try to keep it, business focused and tie it to the business context so that it is relevant for non-technical business leaders.
Love that. Oh, that sounds really, really great. Maybe I'll sync with you offline about that. It sounds like there might be some good synergies there.
Yeah, sure.
But again, thank you so much for joining us this morning, afternoon, your time. We'll post this recording, so it'll be available for viewing later. Please visit our website, TrustMe.ai, for more information about the solutions that we've been discussing with Matt and with Mir. You can also contact us at contact@TrustMe.ai, contact@TrustMe.ai, as well as find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And thank you so much once again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See ya.